We can.
Okay, great. Awesome. Let me bring up my slide deck. Awesome. Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to our Decisions Daily Lunch and Learn. I'm Andrew Las Marias from the Professional Services team. I will be hosting today. Tomorrow, Will Peterson will be back, our Vice President of Client and Support Services. Wednesday, Jared Rodriguez from our training team will be the host. And on Thursday, Andrew Patterson from our support team will be hosting our Lunch and Learn. Just a quick reminder, in case you haven't gotten the emails yet, the end of life for versions up to and including V6 is coming up. I think at this point, we have suspended general support as of March 1st, 2023. And we'll be suspending critical services June 1st. So we do urge you to get in contact with your customer success manager if you have any questions about this for any upgrades or any issues around this. And then also, just a heads up, we do have a bi-weekly product roadmap webinar. Our last one was May 4th, and our next one will be May 18th. And this is really just a webinar with our Decisions product team, kind of going over future changes to the product. We do urge anyone joining the meeting to provide any feedback if you have any, or if you just want to hop on the call to see what's coming up. Feel free to do that. We do have a registration page for that if you would like to join that meeting. And I do know we have at least one pre-submitted question. And I believe that was from Manal.
It's Manal right here.
Manal.
Yes.
And your question was around giving external users access to submitting a decisions form, right?
Yes. So we're trying to just do a link or anything where they just go, like anybody external can go in, and as soon as they open the link, the form shows up, they fill out the form, and then they submit. They can't see anything else, no dashboard, nothing, just a link to form, and that's it.
Yep, great. So there is a way to do that, and there is so depending on, I'm assuming this is some type of flow that you've created that has a form on it that we want that user to submit or fill out and then submit, and then have no other access to anything else. Yes. So the way to do that is building out your form or your flow and your form that the user is going to be filling out and submitting. Once that is done, what you want to do is then at the top right of the flow designer, there's this publish as section. And by default, there's a couple of selections here. API service is usually meant for, if we just want to run this flow as an endpoint somewhere. And then what you'll be wanting to use is the user interface. So if I click on user interface, there is a reference type here. We could keep this default. It defaults as ID or path. And once we click on done, you'll then see this button for view. When you click this button for view, it will take you to this window. And this is where you'll be able to see the URL that you could use for this specific run of the flow. There's a few things that you will have to keep in mind. Because they are external users, there's two ways to kind of leverage, I guess, their authentication to decisions. And that is done on the left side of the screen where setup is. So, outside of, the person being an external user, you could use this for anyone who is an existing user. So when they click on this URL, it'll take them to the decisions login screen. Or we could have the credentials already being sent to them, so there's no need for them to sign in using a current session ID that's in the system. But in our case, what we were going to want to do is leverage one of two things. We have the ability to set this link to use a guest account. The guest account does need to be set up. And I do have a document here in our documentation website where you are able to set up a guest account. And this is sort of like creating an account that anyone can use. You do want to make sure you're specifying permissions for this guest user. So if there's certain projects that we don't want this user to use, we want to specify those in the portal. Outside of using the guest account, we could also use name sessions. So in decisions, we're able to create name sessions that are linked to specific accounts. So if I go to system, security, name sessions, we could create name sessions. Name sessions will just ask for a name and an account that we would want to associate that name session to. Once we hit save, what it's going to do is give us a name session ID. This will be the session ID that's used in that URL that will give access to whoever's clicking on that URL to execute, the form or do whatever is added on that flow.
Quick question. Sorry.
Mhm.
So if you said you can choose an account, but if they're external, how would I do that for the letter generation?
So what most customers do
Mhm.
is create a generic account for the name session. So you can see this test, they're using letter generation at decisions.com. This isn't a real user. This is just an account in Decisions that they've set up permissions for on specific areas of their projects, to where if they use this name session, they'll have access to read or to write on that project. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Which one? So for example, we don't know any of these people who is going to
Mhm.
log in. There's no way we can just give them a link. We do have to, even in the guest account, I have to get their names, whoever is going to use it.
So the guest account sort of works the same way. They're going to be able to use the link and be spoofed as either the guest account or the name session account.
Gotcha. Is there any way like you can show the example for the guest account? Like how would it work? Or there's no way you can set that up right now, right?
When setting up the integration, you would just be clicking on guests.
Mhm.
The only thing that's changing in the URL is this URL parameter where it's saying guess equals true. But on the enabling side, we would go to the settings. I believe it is in accounts. And activate. Okay. So we'd be activating this account. And providing it, I guess, some can use permissions. And really all the setup is on the actual guest account record. But to your case, if you needed the information of the user that's actually clicking on it, they would have to provide that. There's no way in decisions for us to know who's clicking on that URL automatically, or I guess pre-populated information about that user.
Gotcha. So in like the flow data, I usually see like you can get the current user that would not show up either.
It would not show. It would show as guest account, or if you're using name session, it would be the name session account that is showing.
Gotcha. Because like once they fill out the form, then it's goes to internal users for the approvals. And then once
Yes.
internal users approves, then it goes back to well, it sends them a confirmation email. So there's no way I can send them confirmation email unless I have their name set up.
Yeah, so in that case, either they would have to provide their email,
Hmm.
or if there's a section before their, I guess their portion of the flow starts, where we're actually sending them an email and we know what their email is,
Hmm.
we would have that data at that point. So yeah, I've worked with customers where they're setting a approver who's external to decisions, but they have their email set. So we're sending that person who still doesn't have an account in decisions an email that we provide this URL to them for them to go into decisions, fill out the form, and submit. And we're still working off the email that we have gotten from them or have selected to send out to. But unfortunately, there isn't a good way of confirming that that's the actual person who's clicking the URL.
Gotcha. And one last thing. So I know you said that for the flow. So they won't see anything in the flow, right? The first thing when they open the URL, the first thing they will just see is the form, because I know you have other stuff.
Yes.
They won't see the workflow or anything in the back end.
Yep. Nothing on the back end. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Then there was one last thing. So we have our security team. Are there any certain steps to be taken for our security team to be allowed the external access, or it's just all on our basis?
I think it's all on your bases, making
Hmm.
sure that we're going through our projects and making sure specific permissions to things aren't allowed. They only have, like, if you're using a name session, only
Hmm.
giving that name session account really specific permissions to the flow that they need to see or to run.
Gotcha. And when I give them a permission, I just gave that a guest permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the guest
Yes,
account. So whenever I do set up the guest account, that's where I set up the permissions for them.
correct. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. That makes
And
sense.
what
Mhm.
I will do is in our chat, I'll just paste this in here. So you'll have two documents as well. So the first one is enabling the guest account.
Mhm.
And the next one is kind of what we were talking about, creating an assignment for a guest user.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you so much. That would be great.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Cool. Looks like we have a few people on the call. Roman, did we have any other questions that came in during that section? Okay. For the time being, what I will be going through. So with the PS team, I'm working with a lot of customers, and I'm on the time and materials team, where I'm working smaller projects with customers, or even doing process coaching with customers. Lately, I've been helping out with a lot of auditing on clients' projects, and kind of just understanding what they've built out, what we can do to improve their flows, their processes, or make it easier for them to develop in the system. So what I wanted to do is kind of just go through a few of the general things that I usually see when I'm auditing customer projects, or even internal projects as well. So when we do an audit, there's usually like 4 categories that we go into. Those 4 categories are performance enhancements. This is really looking for anywhere in their process, anywhere in their workflows where we think we could speed up their flows, make them more consistent, or make them more stable. Another category is designer enhancements. These involve fixes that resolve around the designer experience, either making it easier or more consistent for anyone to come into the project new and be able to develop and understand what is going on. Another category that we have is redesign, and this is really sort of could be around performance enhancements or changes to the data, but they're large scale fixes and redesigns that change the core functionality of the project. And then the last one is best practice. And these are the things that just make developing and decisions a lot easier for designers or users, and can be generally used as desired from the team, or do not impact the working flow. So can everyone see my screen? There's really no purpose of this flow, but other than to kind of show off some things that I usually see in audit. So there's no real functionality of this flow, but just to show us some things that I usually see when auditing customers' projects or internal projects. So usually when I'm going through the process, I like starting at, if there is the main flow of a project, starting at where, whether it's an endpoint or a submission flow that's being used 100 times a day or thousands times a day. I'd like to start there, because usually that's where everything starts branching out from. And when going into a flow, there's a few things that I try to look for. Other than going straight to the flow, I like going into the information panel and checking if the developers put a description in here. Other than what the name of the flow can be, that will give us a good idea of what we're looking at. I like making sure, and it's a best practice, to provide some description, some details on what we are trying to accomplish in the flow. Other than the description, I like looking at the tags. Tags make finding these flows in a project of 100 forms, 100 flows, a lot easier to manage. Usually what I see is people using a main flow tag, or say like an endpoint tag, so we know that this flow is an endpoint that's being used externally somewhere, and we know it's one of the main processes that we use in a project. Cool. So outside of the information panel, I then go into examining the flow and what has been built out. First 2 things I like looking at is readability of the steps. Best practice that we try to I know, some of these flows could be pretty big and overwhelming, but what we try to do best is making sure that we're renaming our steps in the system so they're more readable for any user coming into the flow, any designer, any admin, so we know exactly what's going on into this process. So things like create data steps, we like to rename, initializing set number or mapping set number value, renaming any add steps or any calculation steps to make them a little bit more specific to what we are trying to accomplish with that step, renaming fetch entities to display what we're actually fetching, things like that. Outside of making sure that our step names are set appropriately, the readability of the flow is also a big thing. So like small things like this, making sure that our lines are set up pretty straight, and make sure there's an actual flow to the process, either going from left to right or up to down, nothing that's too confusing where we can't understand where the flow might be going in terms of the directions. So outside of readability on our flow steps and our actual flow through the steps, I then just go step by step, looking at what we can do to improve the process, seeing if there's anything that might stop us from understanding if there's any errors happening, losing any information that we might need for the flow. So first thing we can do here, so create data, what I would suggest here, just making sure we're renaming the step if we to make it a little bit more descriptive. Same for this add step, making it more descriptive to what we're actually trying to accomplish. Then going on to the next step. So we have an integration here. One thing that I like to make sure with integrations is, by default, integrations usually have this error path. And what I see a lot is the error path just going on to the next step or somewhere else. And the issue that we have here is that if we do have an error here, we wouldn't know that necessarily, or most users running this flow wouldn't know that, because we're not setting any log steps. We do have a catch exception here, but because this is just going to this form, it wouldn't be caught as an exception. So biggest thing to make sure with working with integrations like this, or any step that would have a default error outcome path, is just making sure you're handling it appropriately. Maybe in this case, we have something on the form that knows if we have an error on this step, it will display some type of message saying, cannot get claim info. But other than that, it's just making sure that, if we do actually have an error, do we actually want to kill the whole process? At the very least, we want to have some type of logging here, or maybe even some type of error handling that could create an assignment for our admin users to know that there's an issue here. But it's just making sure that we're handling this error and not just glossing it over and going on to the next step. Another thing I like doing with some of these calls too is kind of just understanding what they might be doing. And really what that comes down to is seeing if we could leverage caching on some of these calls. So I'm coming into this process, I know a little bit about it. I'm not entirely sure if this is a unique call being done every single time. But if it's something, say we're getting a claim or getting all claims, I like to kind of present it to the customer, seeing, can we turn this into a cached call where maybe if this is running 1,000 times a day, if we cache it for maybe 1 hour, or cache it every hour, we're only running that call once every hour if we're able to. It all depends on the use case. If this is something that we think we're just fetching mostly the same results every time, you can leverage it. But that just goes into sort of like performance enhancements, kind of bringing up, we could leverage caching if it works for this use case. So we went over our error path as well. So another thing that I see a lot when auditing is when utilizing fetch entities. Most of the time, people are kind of considering all of the outcome paths for the fetch entities, meaning fetch entities by default either has the results or no path, or no results. A lot of customers tend to kind of forget about the no results path. I like to make sure with them, reviewing with them, making sure we're actually thinking about if there's anything we need to do with these other results, whether we're not expecting to get more than one of these items. If that's the case, then we would want to utilize the show path for one result. If we are expecting only one item, if we are expecting one item, how do we want to handle the process if we get more than one? Is that a flow breaker in our case, where we need to end the flow and kind of resolve that issue? And then the same for no results. If we don't expect to get no results, do we need to go into some type of exception handling? So it's just making sure we're accounting for all of those outcome paths for the fetch entities, if we need to. And then another thing, very small case here, but we have a for each on account, creating some mapping and then saving that account. I'm sure plenty of you have worked with creating subflows. One of the sayings I hear a lot is never do things more than once. And if you have to, turn it into a subflow. So when I'm going through our processes, I'm trying to see if there's any areas to make, I guess this would be more of a design enhancement, making it easier for our developers to kind of reuse things that we expect to reuse in other processes. It makes it easier to use them, and it also makes it easier to maintain them. So we're changing all of these processes all in one place instead of going through 10 different flows trying to update the same mapping. If everything's all in one subflow, it's all being updated in that subflow, and it is a lot easier for us to use wherever we need to use it. Another thing that I see a lot is the inappropriate use of branch and merge steps. So in this kind of example, I've seen where because it's a branch and merge, there's an idea that, because we're doing them all at the same time, it should make the process run a little bit faster. That's not the case. Branch and merge steps are mostly used used in conjunction with assignments. So say we are submitting a form and we have 3 separate approvers that need to review that submitted form. This is when we would probably leverage branch and merge steps, if they all need to be approved by those 3 people at the same time. So best practice there, if you're using a branch and merge step, try to use it around assignments or the process stopping at a point. And then error handling is a big thing that I see or I don't see in a lot of processes. Error handling will make testing and maintaining processes a lot easier. In this case, we have a simple catch exception to a log step. Maybe that's all you need, but at least have something to catch exceptions and to let us know what's going on. You could make this a little bit more elaborate of creating a process that actually creates an assignment for, say our admin team or designer team to look into the issue. So that is all possible. But at least having some type of error handling in the process is needed. And then one last thing, and I think I kind of missed it when going through renaming our steps, is a little gotcha is when you rename your steps, and say this is after the fact, we've created the flow, everything is working the way it should, and you're going back into the flow and kind of making it a little bit cleaner for any developer after you. When renaming steps, make sure a little gotcha here is if I were to change this to add number A to number B, our output name is currently add1 underscore output. If I go back into this, it will change. It will change because I changed what the default step name was. It changed to what I set it to, and now I should expect any other place where this used to be mapped to the add1 output to be invalid. So just watch out for that. Really, it only happens when you're renaming the default name. But other than that, just a small gotcha for cleaning up our process and making it a little bit more readable for our users. That's all I had on auditing, just more of our common stuff. We have any questions? I see one from Jeff. A question regarding being able to get a list of files from a drive network or network drive. So much like the list files and directory steps, but as Jeff, are you able to share your screen? Can we see the error that you're getting?
Sure.
Also, Jeff, before you share your screen, I just have to mention that this is being recorded and will be publicly released on the web for educational coaching purposes. So please be cautious and mindful on any information that you plan on screen sharing to the public. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a second to format it such that it will get us there. We need.
And Jeff, if that's an issue, what I would suggest is we could create a support ticket for this and get some assistance there for you.
That
Off the call.
might be the better pathway, but yeah. So.
Okay.
No, that's why it's yelling at me. Just a second, and I can get you a screenshot. Just gotta change a thing because I had to change a password today. Okay.
Access.
Let me just take a screenshot.
So network read all texts was working, right?
Yes, because I can give it, login credentials and such.
Mhm. But list
Um,
files and directory isn't. Okay.
Yeah, because it's getting me an access denied. So let me share this in conjunction with the flow. That should get what we need. Oh, come on. Well, I can move this around. Okay. I think this should be okay. Once I remember where my screens are. Also, did I want to show the screen? Okay. I just blurred out part of the file path.
Yep.
But yeah, so this step is working, as you can see, but this one fails. And that's the error I get. So the only thing I could come up with is that it needs credentials,
Credentials. Yep.
but that step doesn't allow me to give credentials. And I couldn't find a step that
believe-
is specific to a network drive to allow me to list the files that are in that location.
Mhm. I believe there's a setup to this, and I'm not 100% sure where it is. Jeff, I think the best bet would be creating the support ticket so we could help you with this.
Okay.
I don't want to fumble around. on the
Yeah,
call.
that's fine. Is there an easy article that explains that process?
For submitting a support ticket,
Yeah,
we should.
this will be the first one I've done. So
Okay.
I
What
can
we
also
could
talk to
do
my
is.
supervisor.
So what we could do for now, the best way to submit the support ticket is there's access to the portal. I'm not sure if you have access to the portal yet, but if you want to get help as soon as possible, emailing support@decisions.com with your issue will create the support ticket on your side, and then someone will reach out to you.
Okay, I do have access to support.decisions.com. So if that's where I
Okay.
would do it, I'll just do it there.
Yes. Yep. If you go there should be actions bar on the top left for submitting a support ticket.
Cool. I will do that. Thank you much.
Awesome. Cool. So that is all I had on the auditing side. If we had no more questions, I think we could wrap up a little bit earlier today. Sounds good. So if anything comes in, just let us know. Jeff, I'll be looking out for your support ticket, and hoping to get someone on that a little bit sooner for you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for joining our call today, and have a great Monday.